Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Above Board podcast, and it is another solo episode today. I'm getting lonely here. I'm looking forward to having Matt and Rich back with us soon on the podcast. But today we're going to talk about something that I think a lot of us struggle with. I know I do, which is distinguishing between what's important and what's urgent. Now, I want to start this by sharing a quote from President Dwight D. Eisenhower that sets the stage for this conversation. And the quote is this: "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." Now, at first glance, that sounds very simple, I know. But I think we also all know that feeling where we're in the middle of a super busy day and it's tough to just take a step back, have a breath, and then make the distinction between the two because everything feels urgent. You've got this deadline fast approaching. Your inbox is just flooding with new emails. Someone's calling you about a meeting that starts in 10 minutes. And then it's sort of easy to get trapped in this cycle of only doing the urgent stuff. But here's the thing: those urgent tasks, they rarely are the things that move you forward in a meaningful way in the bigger picture. So this Eisenhower principle, this is where this decision matrix comes into play. And it's a very famous thing. I just learned about this a few years ago myself, which is why I'm recording this podcast, because I figured, hey, maybe some people are learning about this as well. But if you haven't heard of it, it's basically like a simple two by two box. There's four quadrants, and it breaks it into four categories. There's the urgent and important things. That's kind of obvious. It's urgent and important. So these are critical tasks and they got to get done and they have a deadline that's now. Then there's the important things, but they're not urgent. That's the second quadrant. And these usually lead to long-term success. It involves planning and strategizing and stuff like that. There's the third one, which is the urgent, but not important. And unfortunately, this is the distraction that a lot of people live in, where they feel this pressure to get things done, but there's not necessarily doing that's not moving the needle or contributing to your core goals. And then there's the final quadrant, which is not urgent and not important. Those are the time wasting things like scrolling on social media, for example. So here's the hard part. Most of us spend way too much time in that third quadrant, the urgent but not important. Why? Well, at least for me, I've learned that it gives me an instant sense of accomplishment, of gratification. They're quick fixes, like answering that email, responding to a Slack message that feels productive in that moment. But in reality, it's actually pulling your attention and time away from what really matters. And let's be honest, it's hard to kind of resist. There's a chemical effect in the brain, this dopamine release, on checking something off your to-do list, even if it's small. I'm so guilty of that. I feel the most productive when I've got a list of 12 to 15 tasks on my to-do list for the day, and I'm just rolling through them and checking them off because I feel accomplished. But what I've had to kind of learn and realize over the years is that sometimes completing the one task, the one thing that's really difficult and really important, is better than doing those 12 to 15 micro things. It typically has this very outsized impact on moving the needle of progress forward. And then, just living in that urgent quadrant or that urgent zone, it's just honestly exhausting. It drains your energy and it keeps you in this constant state of reaction, which for me is like this fight or flight state. I'm always just sort of waiting to react to the next thing and respond to it. And so I find for me, the real challenge is making time for what's important, but not urgent. So that's that second quadrant. That requires a heck of a lot of discipline and scheduling. So this happens to me a lot. I'll schedule something that's important. Before you know it, I made the awful decision of checking my emails just before I was about to dive into that task for the first hour of my day. And guess where my attention went to? It's actually pretty funny. The best days are when I can really have that discipline to say, I'm not going to open my inbox yet. I'm not going to do it until I'm ready, until I've accomplished this difficult and hard thing for the day. Because your inbox ends up just being a laundry list of tasks that other people are assigning to you. If you think about it, it's open-ended work, it's questions, it's things that you have to answer, that you have to think about, that you have to go find the answer to. And so they might be important too, and they probably fall under that important slash urgent category. But what I had to learn for myself is like, I'm going to get those things done anyway. So, like, what good is it to sit there and worry about those things and let it derail my plans from what was important? Like, you're going to get it done in a timely manner. You're going to respond to that email. You're going to call that person back. So why put all the stress on your plate and then like distract your brain from the task at hand? I say a lot of these things in the podcast for out loud for my own effect. So how do we actually shift our attention? How do we shift our focus? So quick little simple checklist of things I want to run through to stay focused on those important things and not just the urgent. First one is a bit of organization. It's starting with reflection. So, or starting with preparation. Actually, is maybe the better way. And so that could be at the beginning of the day. For me, it's at the end of the prior day. So at the end of my day, I spend probably 5 to 10 minutes writing out what my to-do list is, writing out all the tasks I have, writing out what my calendarizing my day and filling those tasks in between meetings. And then I prioritize and ask myself, like, what are the top one, two, or three things that I need to accomplish? And then do those things first. So it's a little bit of preparation. I also think, I don't do this every day, but from time to time when I'm feeling very disorganized and stressed, I will categorize my tasks. So I will literally draw out those 4 quadrants that we talked about in the Eisenhower Matrix and then write those tasks in what box they belong in to sort of visually see for myself. And it's very powerful. It's eye-opening to see that and go, okay, that's what I need to focus on today. And then focus on that important thing. So this is making the conscious decision. This is step 3. So, starting with preparation, categorizing your tasks with the Eisenhower Matrix, and then actually starting with that first thing. So for me, it looks like calendarizing it, scheduling it out so that the first thing I do in the day, if I can help it, is that number 1, or the number 2 box, which is important but not urgent. And then the things that exist in the quadrant of not important and not urgent, really, for me anyway, and I think anyone listening to this, like, we really should consider, if they're not adding value, can we delegate this? Or better yet, can we just cross it off the list and eliminate it because it's not really important to do right now and it's not urgent to do right now? So that's another thing. And then finally, I would say just setting boundaries. If you're constantly putting out fires, that's maybe a sign for you that you need stronger boundaries. Again, for me, the example I give is that email thing that I mentioned earlier, where I'm really trying to be protective of my time by waiting to check my inbox until after I do those 1, 2, or 3 difficult things for the day. Or maybe it's learning to say no to a request from somebody if it doesn't fit inside of what your long-term goals are. So up till this point in the brief conversation we've had, obviously I'm using like work examples, but this applies on the personal side too. And I think we all struggle with it. Let's talk about your health for a minute. Like, that you need to eat better, you need to exercise, but sometimes life happens and you push that off. Like I can't tell you how many times I've done that, or I've at least had that thought in my head where I'm like, oh man, all this stuff happened out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it for the day. It's kind of urgent. It's kind of important. You know what? I'm just going to take care of it. I'll work out tomorrow. Your health is not maybe urgent for some of us listening to this. Maybe it is, but for most people, it's not urgent, but it is awfully important. So we want to, make sure that we're prioritizing and spending time on investing in things like our own health, for example. And, for me, like this is a very relatable example to my own life, but I'll have days where I go, gosh, you know what? I can't do it today. Like, I can't get that workout in. It's just not going to be there. But I would say it's become part of my habit and routine where now when I hear that little voice in my head saying like, yeah, just do it tomorrow, you can put it off. I try to compromise at least and say, well, you know what? Maybe I don't have the time to do like a full out, like 60-minute workout, but I can stack some activities. I could do a work call and I could put a weighted vest walk on and walk around my neighborhood. I might be like huffing and puffing into the phone and might sound like kind of weird to somebody, but at least I'm like multitasking and still getting some physical activity in for the day. So this stuff, guys, I mean, it's the rewards here are definitely worth it when you really start to prioritize what's truly important and maybe no longer just living in this constant state of reaction and putting out fires. You can take some time to work towards tasks and important things that align with your vision and with your goals. So I hope today's conversation has at least given you some insight on how to start working towards doing that and prioritizing important over urgent. And certainly, like I said, I hope you found this helpful, and share it with a friend. If you found this helpful and you have a friend that might need this type of reminder today as well on what really matters, share that with them. Until next time, thank you as always for joining the Above Board podcast. And remember, the important things might not always be urgent, but they are always worth your time. See ya.